Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Gulf Coast Real Estate Insider Podcast. I'm Brett Ellis with the Ellis team at Keller Williams down here in sunny Southwest Florida, and my mother, Sandy Ellis, at the Ellis team at Keller Williams in Fort Myers, Florida.
That's right.
All right. So, Sandy, today we released some more information. We released our market spread index. Now, that number came in at 5,380. If you're wondering what that is, I kind of call it the gap index, but it's the market spread index. It's basically the difference between active listings and pending listings. So that has really come down. It's been coming down in recent months. We say anything around 4,800 is really a balanced market. We're down to 5,380. It came down like another 68 units last week, 30 the week before, 39 before that, and 219 the week before that. So we're just eating into that inventory. So it just seems like properties have been flying off the market. What do you think?
Well, definitely been a change recently. Yeah, we're seeing more houses going off the market. Well, we've been pretty steady all along, but we actually are seeing,
we don't go by what we do. We go by the overall market because it's unfair. We could be having a bang up month, and we do a lot of times, and the market could be down. And then maybe we'll have a slower month for us, but the market could be actually doing better. And one has not necessarily anything to do with the other.
That's true. Sometimes it has to do with some of the other indexes that we're actually going to talk about, right?
Well, let's talk about some of them. So our current market index, we've released a plethora of activity this week of our indexes. We've released the current market index, the luxury market index, the invisible listings index, which we'll go over in a minute, and then today the market spread index, and we updated our Fort Myers hub. So a lot of stuff. By the way, you want to check any of this stuff out, go to topagent.com. That's where I'm at right now.
And you've been reporting this stuff for years, right?
We have. We've been doing this a long time. This is information, we're the only ones that have it. But basically, here you go. The current market index came in at 3.47. It was 3.42 the week before.
So that's not a huge change.
No, but that's one index out of all of them where it actually went up. That actually helps the buyers a little bit and not the sellers, but everything else.
But it's still pretty much a balanced market.
You're talking 1/100th of a point. So to me, it didn't move much.
It didn't. Yeah.
But hey, we report it just as it is. So let's look at, let's go to that luxury inventory index because it went down a little bit. It went from 4.46 to 4.41. Again, 5/100ths of a change. Pretty much not change, but it did go down, which tends to believe that the luxury is doing better than the general. Could that possibly be? Well, it could possibly be because it did. The numbers don't lie. Now, what do they mean? To me, they're both pretty steady. They're both pretty low.
I would agree.
Okay. Yeah. And then one of my favorite indexes is the invisible listing index. So we have determined that the overall market right now, 17.26% of all the listings out there are invisible.
That seems like a high number to me. Like higher than maybe it ought to be, right?
Well, in a perfect market, you'd have 0 invisible listings.
Right.
But think of it this way.
Does that mean we're doing our job right?
It's not us. It's the market. You can have perfect realtors, and then are all buyers and sellers motivated the same? Have you ever had a buyer that says, I want to lowball the heck out of this, and if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't care?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a seller that said, I want this, and if I don't get it, I don't care? Now, we don't have to take the listing, but somebody might, or maybe you don't know. Like there's no data there, and you throw a number out there and try it, and the market says, no, we don't accept that.
Just don't.
So,
yeah.
And then when markets shift, sometimes you're caught in a land where it's like, oh, the market just shifted. No one knew that, this thing was going to sit. So, but anyway, let's talk about what an invisible listing is. What we do is, and we're the only ones I know that have done this, and we've been doing this since like 2010. We determined the velocity of homes leaving the market, and then we look at how long a home has been on the market, and the fact that if it's been on the market longer than the absorption rate, then it's never going to sell unless you take some action. You need to market it differently, you need to clean the place up, you need to refurbish it, or you need to reprice it. Because the market is, at its current state is rejecting it, and it's become invisible. It's like the market just doesn't care about that listing anymore. And it sounds cruel, but it's a mathematical formula that it becomes invisible. Now,
Well,
does that mean all listings that are invisible can never sell? No. If you take action, you can make it visible again. That could be listing with another realtor with expertise. It could be, hold on, let me finish. It could be repricing it. It could be putting in the new windows that it needed that everyone objected to. It could be fixing the flood damage. It could be a lot of different things. But go ahead with your thought.
Well, I was just going to say, sometimes it could be a property that has a tenant in it that really doesn't want you to sell it too badly, right? And so every time the property is shown, it has all kinds of things all over the place. I actually went one like a week ago, and it had Drano on the bathroom cabinet. I'm like,
So when we're talking in the micro, there's always a reason. In the macro, there's a collection of these micro reasons, and we're reporting the macro, which is 17.26% of the overall market is unsellable. It could be because of a tenant. So just to piggyback, let's say you got a tenant that's been in there 20 years, and for the last 5 years they've tried to sell that property, but the tenant's just not cooperative. Do you think that property's going to sell tomorrow?
no, I think it's going to
invisible.
stay in that invisible listing
I agree.
sector. Yeah.
And there's all other kind of reasons
But not
too.
all tenants are like that. Some of the tenants are absolutely exceptional,
Yeah.
It can go either way. That's just kind of one example.
Now let's break it down by price range. So in the less than 300,000 range, you're almost 30%, like 29.21% are what we call invisible. So you need to know this information if you've got a home that you want to sell in a certain price range. If you look at the $1 million plus or more, only 6.7% are what we call it invisible. That's pretty good. So you're beating the market. Now that kind of coincides with our luxury index that we
With your
did.
index that says they're selling.
Yeah.
And
so
they're selling because they're priced more correctly.
And the next highest would be the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So you don't want to be invisible. You know why? And this makes sense. Just my first blink at this says, if you're overpriced or over out of market, that's a price sensitive market in that 300 to 400. So if people can't afford, or if it doesn't measure up to the other homes, they're only going to pick the best homes that match what they're looking for. If you're over and they can't afford it, you might as well be invisible because they can't afford it for the features you offer.
Well, and it's going to be scrutinized. It's going to be scrutinized by not just the buyer, but the lender, the appraiser, the home inspector, everybody. So it's going to have to stand up. Yeah.
Now, the last thing we did, Sandy, we updated what we call our Fort Myers hub. Once a month, I'll go in and we'll pick just the overall Fort Myers area. Now, this isn't Cape Coral. This isn't Bonita Estero. This isn't Lehigh Acres. It's just the Fort Myers general area. And what we found was that sales are accelerating in Fort Myers. There were 425 sales in March alone, median price of $425. That didn't change. The active inventory is down to 1,917. The list price to sale price ratio is 96.5. That's better than the overall market. And we have only a 5.64 month supply of homes in the Fort Myers area.
And we're saying the balanced market is 6.
6.
Right?
Yeah, so you are approaching seller's market territory. Some people argue between 5.5 to 6. I've seen 6 a lot of times. I'd call it fairly neutral, but heading towards seller's market. Now, do you think all buyers know this right now? Because what have buyers heard for 3-4 years?
Buyers find it out when they make offers on properties that are too low and they get rejected and somebody else buys it out from under them,
And maybe
And that
for
happens.
a lot, like
More money, yeah.
we've seen buyers that will lowball. So let's say you have a $600,000 or $700,000 property, they'll come in 100 off. Well, that's probably not going to cut it if if they're priced anywhere where they should be.
Right.
So that gets rejected. They don't even get the counter offer. And then another buyer comes in and buys it for maybe a little bit off. And they're like, I guess I didn't. The buyer has two choices. They could say, well, that buyer's dumb. They overpaid. They don't know what they're doing. Well, did they? I mean, what do the comps say? Was their bank involved? Did they appraise it?
Well, and sometimes that happens to a buyer, 2 or 3 times before they actually realize, oh yeah, the market has changed.
But wouldn't it
And
be
then they check
beneficial?
the index. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be beneficial to talk to an agent who actually knew what the market was doing? It could show you. It's not like feelings. It's not like, I feel like you should offer more. I feel like this. We could show you, here's what the indexes are. Here's what the market's willing to pay for this kind of thing. Like, I think people feel a certain way in the absence of data. And when the data shows up, or shows up in a way they never knew was there, they can take their feelings out of it and say, hey, I'm willing to pay that. I just didn't know it was worth that. If you can show me, like, and not sell me, like, you know, you go to a car dealer, they're trying to sell you,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so, and you just went through that, so you know what that's like.
I did, yeah.
So, and I'm not saying they're bad people, but they're trying to sell what they're trying to sell. But if you talk to someone in real estate that wasn't trying to sell you, but just show you, here's what the market is. And you know, this is one of the things we do. We sit down with a buyer before we ever go out, before they ever fall in love with a property. We're not selling them any one property. We haven't even looked at them yet. We educate them on the market. It's the same thing with our sellers. They need, they need to know what's going on in the market, so they know what they're up against. Because who's the competition with the seller?
Sometimes it's the seller himself.
Well, I didn't think of that, but yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But let's take that out of the equation. Who is the competition for the seller?
Well, the competition is, I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for there.
I'm
Brett.
saying it's all the other sellers. You're not in competition with the buyer. The buyer's going to do what's best for them. They're going to pick the best value for them. You're in competition with all the other sellers, because if they undercut your price and they have the exact same thing, you're not in competition with the buyers. The buyer's going to pick that listing. That listing is your competition. So you need to know where you stand in the marketplace.
Now, and sometimes sellers look at it like, well, I know every home in my neighborhood, and I have, so I'm right. But what they're not always realizing, that the other competition is sometimes not just in their neighborhood. It's in their
anywhere in
price
town.
range.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Now,
it's in different locales.
let me ask you this. Who's the competition for the buyer?
Well, it's all the other buyers that are out there.
Exactly right. It's not, and if they get their sights set on a house, it's not a question of it's me against the seller. It's a question of it's me against all the other buyers. Is there another buyer that's going to step up and buy this house? If I'm confident that no buyer is going to offer a dime more than I'm offering, I've got nothing to worry about. The seller will be forced, if they want to sell it, to eventually come to where I am. But because I'm in competition with all the other buyers, if another buyer does step up and buy it, I lose it, if that was my dream house.
Well, and a buyer doesn't always know that another offer wasn't made yesterday, and it wasn't exactly what that seller wanted, but it was much closer, much different than the offer they're presenting. And then what happens is that realtor goes back to the other people. Sometimes you actually set up a different buyer to buy the property you really wanted because you came in too low.
So let's break that down. Hypothetical, $600,000 home. Another offer came in yesterday at $572. We're unaware of it because we wouldn't know that. Our buyer comes in and decides they want to lowball it at $550. Now, we just made that $572 a lot better. The seller was going to counter that at $590, but now that a $552 came in, maybe they'll find a way to get together at $580 or $578 or $585 or something. And we helped that other buyer put that deal together because we didn't know that there was another offer already on the table. And so that's further evidence, though, Sandy, that coming in too low really does nothing for you, because all you do is tick off the seller. They may not want to work with you again, even if there was no other offer. And if there was, you might have just helped set up another offer.
You might set up the other offer, yeah. That's probably, for me, the biggest danger, because we don't know what we don't know.
But okay, I'm a buyer. Let me role play with you a little
Okay.
bit. Well, but Sandy, I just want to feel them out. Let's just throw a number out there. At least they'll tell us kind of what they're thinking, and we'll have a better idea, because I don't want to overpay for this house.
Okay, and you could do that, Brad. However, how are you going to feel if when you put that there that you don't get it and someone else actually buys it right out from under you?
Okay, but let's say there isn't a buyer right now.
But you don't know that, right?
Okay, but let's say we do know that right now.
Okay, well, say you do know that right now, and you make that offer. There are some sellers that take that personally because they know what they put into this house. They know what they went through to get that all done, and sometimes it was a grueling process for them. You know, maybe they spent every penny that they had to make it look the way they thought it should look, right?
I would argue that you misused the word some, because I think
many
sellers,
yeah.
they take an emotional stake in that property.
Right.
Because it's something you lived in. It's not like just an investment. It's
a part of themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so when you come in with this low offer, for some of them, it's very difficult.
Personal.
It's very personal, and it's very difficult to not get emotional about it and respond. And it's that emotional level that sometimes it's hard to overcome and even come back with another offer that's more suitable.
So in this hypothetical
although
deal,
we can do it.
There's 600. Our hypothetical buyer was at 550. We're at an impasse. Nothing happens. A week goes by. The seller says, "Okay, it didn't sell at 600. I'm going to reduce it to 590 or 585." Boom! Another buyer comes in and says, "I'll offer 570. Can't do 570, but we'll do 575. Boom, boom, done deal." And our buyer might have been willing to pay 575, but they never got the chance because they were so far apart it wasn't even worth countering. And a week goes by, the seller changes a little bit. They were willing to compromise a little, but our buyer missed out on all those opportunities. It's one of those hidden negotiation things that can actually work against you.
And it happens all the time.
Having this data, though, knowing what the market is doing and then what a house reasonably should sell for, because we don't want any of our buyers overpaying for a property. We don't want any of our sellers taking less than their home is worth. It's just the market has got a way of determining. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, and we have to do some analysis. That's what we do. We educate our clients, and then they make the decision. And then we make the decision, can we work with them? Basically, we make the decision, can we help them? If they want this, and we say the market's this, and they won't budge, we can't help them. No agent can help them. Now, if they want this and this, and we think there's a way to kind of get them there, we've done some things, but it's all about educating and then deciding if we can help them and if they want our help.
There used to be a lot of late night TV shows, remember, that taught people how to buy something for pennies on the dollar. And so during that time, people would come to us with very unreasonable expectations. But I think today we have a much more knowledgeable buyer for the most part, especially people who look at the indexes and watch the market. And we don't have that much of that anymore, right?
Yeah. Maybe it's because we're not staying up as late at night as we used to. I don't know.
Well, I didn't watch those shows, but I talked to people who did.
Maybe they're there. I don't know.
Yeah,
so
could be.
Anyway, good show. We talked about a lot of great things. We talked about all the data we released this week, why it's important to both the buyer and the seller, and a little bit of behind the scenes of how negotiations work, how people and their psyche, how they take things personal. Just a lot of good stuff. I think we need to have more conversations like this so people can get the back end feel of how real estate really works. And maybe we'll do a show one of these days about the back end so people see, hey, what's the process from A to Z and stuff. So, but anyway, this is our April 10th edition of the Gulf Coast Real Estate Insider Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
The Ellis team at Keller Williams is a family affair.